So I never thought jury duty could actually be interesting. Like, not just the usual dreary waiting rooms, awkward silences, and people trying way too hard to look bored. But here I am, sitting in this courthouse, trying to keep my nerves in check, when I realize the bailiff standing near me keeps biting his lip. Not like a nervous twitch or anything, more like a slow, deliberate bite that somehow feels personal. And yeah, it caught me off guard. Let me back up a bit. I'm Mark, 29, software developer by day, basically a homebody who enjoys pizza and bad sci-fi movies. When I got the jury duty notice, I figured I'd show up, fill out some paperwork, get sent home, and then binge watch whatever series 1 was already halfway through. You know, the usual. But this courthouse is one of those old brick buildings downtown with creaky floors and those tall windows that let in this weird, dusty light. The kind of place that smells like history and stale coffee. It's early morning, and the lobby is already buzzing with people who either look annoyed, stressed, or like they're about to pass out. Me? I'm just trying to sneak a peek at my phone without looking too obvious. Then there's the bailiff. His name tag says Eli, and he's this guy in his early 30s, tall, with this easy smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He's got this casual confidence, like he's been here 100 times and knows exactly how to keep everyone in line without raising his voice. But what really got me was the way he kept glancing over and biting his lip, like he was trying not to say something, or maybe just waiting for the right moment. I know it sounds weird, but it was distracting. Every time my name was called, or I shifted in my chair, I'd catch him doing it again, like clockwork. At first, I thought maybe he had some nervous habit, but the way he looked at me, it felt different, like there was something unspoken between us, some tiny electric current only we could feel. So here I am, just about to get sworn in, and this whole jury selection thing suddenly feels less like a civic duty and more like the opening scene of a movie I didn't know I was starring in. Honestly, I'm not even sure if I should be paying attention to the case anymore, or just trying to figure out what Eli's deal is. And then the judge calls my name. That's when everything gets real. I stood up, heart suddenly thudding, and walked toward the front where the judge sat perched like some kind of serious wizard. The courtroom had this heavy, formal vibe, with dark wood paneling and the quiet shuffle of papers and soft murmurs from the other potential jurors. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Eli was watching me. When I glanced toward the bailiff's station, sure enough, there he was. That same lip bite, but now coupled with this small, almost shy smile. I figured my face probably looked as clueless as I felt. The judge gave me a brief nod, and I sat down at the jury box. Around me were all sorts of people, some looking anxious, others bored out of their minds. I tried to focus on the judge's words as he explained the process, but honestly, my attention kept drifting back to Eli. He moved with a kind of effortless ease that made the whole courtroom feel less suffocating. When the judge asked if anyone had any conflicts with the case, I raised my hand along with a handful of others. After a few questions, I realized I'd been formally selected. Great. I was officially on the jury. The whole thing was more intense than I expected. The case involved a dispute over a local business contract. Nothing super scandalous, but the lawyers were laying on the facts thick. I nodded along, scribbled notes, and tried to appear engaged. But the thing that kept distracting me was Eli. He was always nearby, whether managing the courtroom or delivering messages from the judge. At one point, during a brief recess, I found myself standing near the water cooler by the hallway, trying to look casual but definitely feeling awkward. Suddenly, I sensed someone next to me, and there was Eli holding a cup of coffee, watching me with that same lip bite thing going on. "Hey," he said, voice low but friendly. "You're Mark, right?" "Yeah, that's me." I wasn't sure where this was going, but I smiled anyway. "I'm Eli," he added, nodding toward the bailiff badge on his chest. "I've seen you around the courthouse before." I shook my head. "Nope, first time here." "Me too, actually," he said with a grin. "Well, first time actually working as a bailiff full-time. I just got this job a couple months ago." "Oh, cool. So you're still getting used to the whole courthouse vibe?" "Something like that," Eli laughed softly. It's a weird place, but there's something interesting about it, like a hidden kind of energy. I had to admit, I felt it too. And for some reason, now that we were actually talking, the lip-biting thing didn't feel awkward anymore. It almost felt like a habit he had when he was thinking, or maybe nervous. So, I said, scratching the back of my neck, "What made you want to become a bailiff?" Eli's smile faltered for a second, like he wasn't sure if he wanted to share, but then he shrugged. "I used to be a security guard, but I wanted a job with a little more purpose, I guess. Plus, I like the idea of helping keep things fair and orderly." That was surprisingly thoughtful. I nodded, impressed. "Makes sense." We stood there for a moment, just sipping our drinks. Then Eli said, "You're handling this jury duty thing better than most, honestly. Most people just want to be anywhere else." "Yeah, well, I'm trying not to get bored out of my mind," I joked. He chuckled and then did it again, the lip bite. This time, it felt like an invitation. "Maybe after this whole thing is over, you'd want to grab a coffee? Without the courthouse walls?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah, that sounds nice." He grinned, a little shy now. "Great, it's a date." Just then, the judge called us back to session, so we had to part ways. But I caught myself smiling the whole time I walked back to my seat. The rest of the day went by in a blur of testimony and legal jargon. Every now and then, Eli would glance over from his post, and I'd see that same slow lip bite. It was like a quiet conversation between us, unspoken but unmistakable. When the courtroom finally adjourned for the evening, I packed up my things and headed toward the exit, hoping to catch Eli for a quick word. As I reached the door, I saw him standing there, waiting for me. "Ready for that coffee?" he asked, eyebrow raised. I grinned. "Absolutely." Outside, the city was buzzing with its usual noise, but in that moment, it felt like the start of something different, something I hadn't expected when I got that jury duty notice. And honestly, I was kind of excited to see where it might go. We ended up at this little coffee shop just a few blocks from the courthouse, a quiet, tucked-away spot with faded brick walls and an overgrown ivy-covered patio out back. Honestly, it was the kind of place you could miss if you weren't paying attention. But it was perfect for a conversation that felt like it had already been quietly building all day. Eli ordered a black coffee, and I went with a latte, mostly because I'm a please-mere for a little milk in my caffeine. We found a small table outside, under the golden glow of the street lamp that flickered just enough to feel cozy without being annoying. The city noise faded into a low hum, replaced by something softer, like the beginning of a real conversation. "So," Eli said, stirring his coffee slowly, "what do you usually do when you're not, summoned for jury duty?" I laughed, because that was a good question. "Mostly, I'm just coding. I work for a small tech startup, and my days are filled with bugs and deadlines. Not exactly thrilling, but it pays the bills." "Sounds intense," he said, raising an eyebrow. "It can be, but I like the challenge." I took a sip and then nodded toward him. "What about you? What do you do when you're not keeping order in courtrooms?" His lips twitched into a smile, but that lip-biting thing happened again. Slower this time, like he was savoring the moment. "I'm actually pretty into music. Play guitar a bit here and there. Nothing serious. Just for fun." I raised my eyebrows. "Really? I wouldn't have pegged you for the musical type." "Yeah, well, I'm full of surprises." He grinned. And for the first time, I noticed these little dimples that popped up when he smiled. God, they were distracting. We talked more about small stuff at first. Favorite bands, weird hobbies, the pros and cons of living downtown. Then the conversation got deeper, as it tends to when you're sitting across from someone and the night stretches out with no rush. Eli shared stories about growing up in a small town and moving to the city to find something more. I told him about my own struggles with feeling stuck, how I sometimes wondered if the routine of my life was all there was. There was this moment, about halfway through our second cups, when Eli reached across the table and brushed a stray hair off my forehead. It wasn't dramatic or flashy, just casual, like a friend making sure you're comfortable, but it sent this unexpected jolt through me. I looked up at him, and his eyes caught mine, dark and steady. That lip bite again, but this time, slower, softer, like he was trying to tell me something without words. "Mark," he said quietly, "I'm really glad you stayed for coffee." "Me too," I admitted, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was doing somersaults. It felt like the world had narrowed down to just us and this quiet evening. For a moment, I didn't care about the jury, the courthouse, or anything else. I just wanted to stay here and see where this connection might go. But then reality crept back in. The next day, we'd both have roles to play, me as a juror, him as the bailiff. Still, I found myself hoping this wasn't just a fleeting moment. We exchanged numbers before parting ways, and as I walked back to my apartment, I kept replaying everything from the evening. The way he looked at me, the way he bit his lip when he was nervous or thoughtful, the way a simple gesture like brushing a hair away could feel so intimate. I realized that sometimes the most unexpected things, like jury duty, can lead to moments you never saw coming. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something worth sticking around for. The next morning, as I entered the courthouse, I caught Eli's eye again. He winked and, yep, bit his lip one more time. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see what would happen next. The next morning, I found myself walking into the courthouse earlier than usual, partly because I wanted to see Eli again, and partly because I was honestly a little nervous about the day ahead. Jury duty had suddenly become way less about the case, and way more about this strange, fluttery feeling whenever he was near. Eli was already there when I arrived, leaning casually against the wall near the entrance. He caught my eye immediately and gave me that same cheeky wink, followed by the unmistakable lip bite. It felt like a secret code between us now, something that said, hey, we're in this weird thing together. I smiled back, trying to play it cool even though my heart was pounding a mile a minute. The judge called us in, and the day began with the usual stuff. More testimony, the lawyers going back and forth, and the other jurors all trying to stay awake. But every so often, my peripheral vision caught Eli moving around the courtroom, keeping things running smoothly, always close enough to feel present. During a brief recess, I made my way toward him. He was standing near the jury box, sipping water, his uniform perfectly neat but his demeanor relaxed, almost approachable. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Hey yourself, he replied, flashing that grin that had become my new favorite thing. So how's the bailiff life treating you? I asked. He chuckled. More paperwork than I expected. You'd think a lot of standing around, but there's always someone asking questions or needing directions. Sounds like a full-time job. It is, but I'm getting used to it. And you? How's jury duty? His eyes locked onto mine, and there it was again, the lip bite, slow and deliberate. Surprisingly, not terrible, I said, shrugging. We stood there for a moment, neither wanting to be the first to break the silence. Then Eli leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. Do you want to grab lunch after this? Somewhere less official? I hesitated, the idea both thrilling and terrifying. But something about the honesty in his eyes pushed me forward. Yeah, I'd like that. The rest of the day dragged on with the usual legal back and forth, but I caught myself watching Eli more than the witnesses. There was something magnetic about him, this quiet strength mixed with a vulnerability I could sense but couldn't quite touch yet. After the final recess, we filed out, the tension in the room lifting as the jury prepared to deliberate. Outside, Eli was waiting again, and we walked to a nearby deli that Eli recommended. The place was casual and cozy, filled with the smell of fresh bread and roasting coffee. We found a corner booth and ordered sandwiches, the conversation flowing easier now that the courthouse walls were behind us. So what made you move to the city? I asked, genuinely curious. Eli shrugged, his expression softening. I guess I was looking for something different. Grew up in a small town where everyone knew your business before you even did. The city felt like a chance to start over. That makes sense, I said quietly. Sometimes I wonder if I'm stuck in a rut here. But then moments like this make me think maybe change is possible. He smiled, the dimples deepening. I'm glad you think that. We talked for hours, sharing stories and laughing over silly things. There was a comfort building between us, like we'd known each other longer than just a couple of days. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light through the window, Eli reached across the table, his hand brushing mine. The touch was light but electric, sending warmth straight to my chest. Mark, he said softly, I don't want this to be just a courthouse thing. Me neither, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. We leaned in, the space between us closing until our lips met gently. It wasn't rushed or intense, just a quiet promise that maybe, out of the most unexpected situation, something real could grow. Walking back to the courthouse later, I felt like I was walking on air. Jury duty had turned out to be way more than a civic obligation. It had become the start of something I hadn't even dared to hope for, and as I caught Eli's eye once more before we parted ways for the night, I knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, waking up felt different, lighter somehow. Like the weight of the world I'd been carrying around had shifted a bit. Jury duty was still looming, but now there was this new thing threading through my day. Eli. The memory of that kiss at the deli stuck with me, warm and gentle, like a secret I couldn't wait to explore more. I got dressed, trying not to overthink it, but my fingers kept brushing over the spot where his hand had touched mine. The courthouse felt less intimidating when I arrived, almost familiar. Eli was already there, straightening a row of chairs near the courtroom entrance. He caught my eye and grinned that same subtle smile, the one that made my chest tighten. "Morning," he said, voice low and easy. "Morning," I replied, trying to sound casual even though my heart was racing. We didn't have much time before the session started, but Eli squeezed my shoulder, a quick, grounding touch. "Good luck today?" "You too," I said, but neither of us was really thinking about luck. There was something else beneath the surface, something unspoken but felt. The day dragged on, the case moving toward closing arguments. The other jurors seemed tense, some whispering quietly, others staring off into space. I wasn't just observing the trial anymore. I was watching Eli, who moved with this calm efficiency that kept everything from spiraling into chaos. Every now and then our eyes met, and that lip bite made me smile inside. During a break, I wandered toward the hallway where Eli stood by the lockers. He looked up as I approached. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, I think so," I said. "This whole jury thing, it's heavier than I thought." He nodded, folding his arms. "It's a lot to carry, but you're handling it better than most." I shrugged, feeling vulnerable. "I guess it's easier with someone around who makes it less courtroom-ish." "Glad to hear that," he said with a grin. Then his expression softened. "I was wondering, would you want to come over sometime? Maybe watch some movies or just hang out. No courthouse, no jury duty." I hesitated, caught off guard but definitely intrigued. "Yeah, I'd like that." We made plans for the weekend. I felt a strange excitement, mixed with nerves. This was new territory, letting someone in beyond the brief courthouse encounters and coffee dates. Back in the courtroom, the final arguments wrapped up. The judge gave us instructions, and the jury filed into the deliberation room. I sat next to a middle-aged woman who'd been quiet most of the trial. We chatted a bit, sharing thoughts on the case without revealing too much. But my mind kept drifting to Eli, how he'd been watching me, biting his lip when he was deep in thought, and that smile that made me want to take risks. Hours passed as we debated the case. Tension built as jurors voiced different opinions, but eventually, consensus was reached. The verdict was unanimous. We filed back into the courtroom, and I caught Eli's eye once more. He nodded slightly, a silent way of saying, "We made it." After the session ended, I found Eli waiting outside. We walked together through the crowded lobby, voices blending with the shuffle of footsteps and murmurs. "So," I said, "tonight, movie night?" He laughed. "Definitely. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk." That evening at his apartment, the vibe was cozy. Dim lights, soft music playing in the background, and a pile of takeout boxes on the kitchen counter. Eli's place was surprisingly warm, filled with personal touches like framed concert posters and a guitar leaning in the corner. We settled on the couch, close but not quite touching, as we started a random sci-fi movie neither of us had seen. Halfway through, Eli nudged me gently. "You okay?" "Yeah, just glad I'm here." He shifted closer, our legs brushing. I felt the familiar lip bite, quieter now but still there. We talked between scenes, about music, bad movies, life's weird twists. It felt easy, like slipping into a rhythm that was just ours. At one point, Eli's hand found mine, fingers curling around mine naturally. I didn't pull away. Instead, I leaned into the touch, the nervous flutter settling into something steady and warm. "Mark," he said softly, voice low enough that it was almost a secret. "This feels right." "Yeah," I whispered back. "It does." The night stretched on, and the world outside faded away until it was just us. Two people finding something unexpected in the middle of a courthouse and a courtroom, and a case that, honestly, didn't matter as much anymore. Because sometimes the best stories start in the most unlikely places. And this one? It was just beginning. The morning light filtered through Eli's curtains, casting soft stripes across the floor. I woke up slower than usual, tangled in his blankets and the comfortable warmth of his apartment. There was this quietness between us that didn't need filling, just the kind of peace that comes when you're close to someone, and everything else fades into the background. I turned to see Eli still half asleep on the couch nearby, his lips pressed together in that familiar way, almost like he was biting his lip without thinking. For a moment, I just watched him, trying to freeze time because that look, subtle but fierce, had become something I couldn't get enough of. Eventually, he opened his eyes and caught me staring. A slow, sleepy smile spread across his face. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning," I replied, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. We stayed there for a while, wrapped up in each other and the quiet hum of the city waking up beyond the window. I couldn't remember the last time I felt this calm. Later that day, I had to head back to the courthouse for the final day of jury duty. Eli walked me to the door, and there was a brief hesitation before he pulled me into a hug. It wasn't just a friendly hug. It was the kind that held promises, a silent acknowledgement that whatever this was, it mattered. "Good luck," he whispered against my ear. "Thanks." For everything. We parted, but I could still feel his presence lingering like a shadow as I made my way back through the courthouse halls. The trial's end was near, and the atmosphere was tense. Jurors whispered among themselves, trying to process everything we'd heard. I felt the weight of my responsibility, but also a strange lightness knowing Eli was there somewhere, watching out for me. During a break, Eli found me by the water cooler. He handed me a bottle of water and smiled, that lip bite happening again, slower this time. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah." "Nervous, but okay." He nodded, as if understanding all the unspoken things swirling around me. Then, with a small laugh, he added, "Don't let the legal jargon get you down. You're doing great." His words felt like a balm, steadying me better than any pep talk could. The final deliberation room was quiet and tense. We discussed, debated, and slowly a verdict formed. When the judge read it aloud, a wave of relief swept through me. Jury duty was over. Outside the courtroom, Eli was waiting, leaning casually against the wall with that mischievous smile that made me want to run my fingers through his hair. I caught his eye, and he bit his lip once more, this time with a little more intensity, like he was trying to hold back something. "Ready to celebrate?" he asked. I grinned. "Definitely." We went to a nearby bar, a cozy place with dim lighting, and a playlist that was just loud enough to make conversation feel intimate. Over a couple of drinks, we talked about everything and nothing. How strange it was to meet someone like this in the middle of something so official and serious. At one point, Eli reached across the table and took my hand again. It was soft but sure, a silent anchor in the noisy bar. "Mark, I want to see where this goes," he said earnestly. "Me too," I said, surprised at how easily the words came. The night ended with a slow, lingering kiss outside the bar, the city lights blinking around us like stars. It felt like the start of something real, a story unfolding with every glance, every touch, every quiet moment. As we walked together, hand in hand, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected chapters are the best ones. And honestly, I was more than ready to write this one with Eli. After that night, everything felt a little different, like the world had subtly shifted on its axis, and the gravity between me and Eli was pulling me in ways I hadn't expected. We slid into this easy rhythm, texting throughout the day, swapping stories that had nothing to do with courtrooms or jury duty, just two guys figuring out who the other was. But I won't lie, it wasn't all smooth sailing. I kept catching myself overthinking, wondering if this was real or just one more fleeting thing that would fizzle out once the jury duty stuff was over. I wasn't exactly practiced at this whole dating thing, especially with someone as cool and composed as Eli. I mean, here was this guy who could control a courtroom full of people with a glance, and I was trying not to trip over my own words when we talked. One afternoon, we met up for lunch at this little taco place Eli swore made the best al pastor in the city. We sat outside, the sun warming our faces, and I could tell Eli was a bit quieter than usual. After a few bites, he looked up and said, "Can I be honest about something?" "Always," I said, smiling. "I'm not great at this. At relationships, I mean. I've spent a lot of my life being the strong guy, the one people rely on, the one who's got it together. And sometimes I worry I don't really know how to be vulnerable." I saw the way his lip twitched, the familiar lip bite, but this time it wasn't shy or playful. It was raw. Real. "I get that," I told him. "I'm pretty used to hiding behind sarcasm and work. Vulnerability's scary." He nodded slowly, eyes searching mine. "Yeah, but with you, I want to try." There it was, that crack in the armor I'd been waiting to see. And for whatever reason, it made me want to lean in even more. We spent the rest of lunch talking about those cracks, the fears, the hopes, the stuff we usually keep tucked away. For the first time since we met, it felt like we were both stepping into something real. Not just the easy parts, but the messy ones too. The days that followed brought us closer in subtle ways. Eli would send me little texts during the day, a random song that reminded him of something we'd talked about, a photo of his guitar with a caption like, "Need a jam partner." I'd respond with jokes, memes, and sometimes just, "I miss you." Because honestly, I did. One evening, we decided to cook dinner together at my place. It was a chaotic, hilarious mess of chopping, laughter, and accidentally burning garlic bread. But there was something comforting about standing side by side in my cramped kitchen, sharing music and stories while the food simmered. After dinner, we settled on the couch with a bottle of wine and one of those ridiculous rom-coms I secretly love. Halfway through, Eli turned to me, eyes sparkling in the dim light. "Mark, this might sound crazy, but I'm really glad that jury duty picked you." I laughed. "You're lucky I showed up." "No," he said firmly, biting his lip again, but this time it felt like a promise. "I mean it. You've made all of this unexpected stuff feel like exactly where I'm supposed to be." I reached for his hand, squeezing gently. "Same here." As the night wore on, we talked about what was next. Not just the next date or the next weekend, but real stuff. What we wanted, what scared us, and how maybe, just maybe, we could face it all together. I realized then that what started as a strange coincidence, a jury duty summons and one persistent bailiff who wouldn't stop biting his lip, had grown into something I didn't want to let go of. And honestly, I was ready to see where this story went, one awkward, beautiful, vulnerable moment at a time. A few weeks later, jury duty was officially behind me, and Eli and I had settled into something that felt steady. No rush, no pressure, just two people showing up for each other. Our dates became less about the novelty and more about the quiet moments, cooking dinner, late-night talks, shared playlists, and those little touches that say more than words ever could. One Saturday afternoon, we found ourselves wandering through a small park near my apartment, the kind of place where the city noise softened and the trees stretched up like they were holding their breath. We sat on a bench, sunlight dappled across Eli's face, and I realized how natural it felt to be here with him. No roles, no expectations, just us. He caught my gaze, and with that familiar lip bite, reached out to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was simple, but it spoke volumes about how much we'd come to mean to each other. "Mark," he said quietly, "thank you for being patient with me, for letting me in." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "No, thank you for showing me what real connection feels like." There was no big, dramatic gesture, no grand declarations or perfect lines. Just this honest, steady moment between two people who found something unexpected in the middle of ordinary life. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow over everything, I felt that familiar flutter, the same one from the first time I noticed Eli biting his lip across the courtroom. But now, it wasn't nervous or uncertain. It was full of promise. Sometimes, life throws you a surprise when you least expect it. What started as jury duty and casual smiles had turned into something real, something worth holding on to. And I knew that, whatever came next, we'd face it together, one quiet, imperfect, beautiful moment at a time.